They are the defending national champions and starting to play as such, as the Florida Gators have one of the more impressive wins of the weekend, beating Kentucky at home. 92-83 the final score. They have won 5 straight games, 10 of their last 11, still set first place in the SEC after a very impressive win there in Gainesville. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. Patrick, we were talking about this game on Friday last week and just the implications that it could have. The reason I went with Florida is I think that these two teams will split at the end of the year, because they'll play later on at Rupp Arena. I just think that Florida right now is playing with a confidence and an identity that I don't know if anybody else in the SEC can match right now.
Yeah, and I mean, going into that Kentucky game, I want to say we talked about this last week where they're up 100 points over this 4-game win streak. Right. Now they're going to be up 110 points with this 9-point win over Kentucky on Saturday. And it seems like this team is starting to become more and more complete as the games start to unravel here as we go down the stretch. In the beginning of the season, we talked about these bigs in Houck and Condon and their ability to bring that experience from last year's national championship winning team and help out these guards. Albeit they're not young, but they haven't played at Florida before coming into this season, and they transferred in. It allowed them to get acclimated with the system, with Todd Golden's system, and we've really started to see both Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee really step up for this team, and that's been, honestly, the X factor here as of late.
Right. One of the things I talked about last week was the fact that in their last, I think it was 8 games, they had like 5 different leading scorers, and so they don't have to rely on just one person, and I think that taking that pressure off Boogie Fland, he struggled at the beginning of the season. Seemingly, he has found his stroke. But then a guy like Xavier Lee steps up with 22 points on Saturday, and it's like, oh wow, this team can find different ways to beat you. So I feel like no matter who the opponent is, whatever their strengths are, I feel like, and it could be proven wrong, I feel like Florida can nullify a lot of those strengths.
Yeah, and I almost kind of want to relate Xavier Lee to one of those top recruits out of high school, because in a way, playing at Princeton in the Ivy League, and again, Princeton is a great program.
For sure.
They just took down Auburn a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It almost feels like you're the guy on the high school team that's dropping 25, 30 points a night. You're committed to a Division I school. So you're going up against a bunch of dudes that are getting ready to go learn about what job they want to get. I mean, just average people. Like you go from dominating your local scene to the step up where everyone is as good as you, and all of a sudden you're not the guy anymore.
Right.
And I almost get a sense of that's what Xavier Lee was kind of going through when he made the move from Princeton to Florida. He wasn't really the guy anymore at Florida because they had these other guys in Houck and Condon who just won the national championship. So he almost had to reinvent himself in a way, and I feel like that's really what he's been able to do here.
Absolutely. Todd Golden's done probably a phenomenal job. I mean, he might be the coach of the year, and I know given expectations because of what they went through last year, but just the mid-season kind of turnaround with this group, I think he's just been pushing all the right buttons so far with this group. Got a chance to hear from Coach on both Xavier Lee and as well as taking out the superstar for the Kentucky Wildcats in 08.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing great, right? I mean, he was fantastic at Georgia. He was great at Vanderbilt. He's stacked some really good games over the last couple weeks. And I thought he was fantastic today. Just got off to a great start, knocking shots down. To your point, he did a really good job of playing, with great patience in the paint, playing off 2, making good decisions, and he gave us a big lift. Obviously, him and Irby shooting the ball the way they did allowed us to win the game the way we did today. Yeah, I mean, a big part of our scout was, to make it tough on, obviously, Ortega and Zell, and, they went 12 for 35 combined from the field, 1 for 9 from 3. I thought we did a really good job of defending those guys. They were trying to score, and we knew that, and so we wanted to keep 2 on the ball when they were getting downhill, kind of force them into those playmaking decisions, and overall it was really good for us. And the things that hurt us were other things, like I thought we did a really poor job on Chandler, letting him get some space. I thought we did a poor job on Diabate, letting him get left. So, big picture wise, I thought, scouting wise, we did a decent job. in the main parts of, what we're trying to accomplish, but the auxiliary stuff really bothered us and allowed Kentucky to stay in the game.
So at the beginning there, he was talking about Xavier Lee. His last couple of games have been really instrumental to this team and their success overall. I do feel like, and you mentioned it earlier, just the fact that he's stepped up a level in competition. I feel like with every game, he's just playing with way more confidence in each and every matchup.
Yeah, and there's one stat here that's really kind of honestly been instrumental in this turnaround for me, and it's been the three-point shooting.
Mm-hmm.
3+ in both of these last two games, averaging 20 points a game. But he's also shooting at a more effective clip as well. It's not like, Boogie Fland earlier in the season, we saw him shoot it a ton, but really wasn't able to get anything to fall. He would have those nights where he's like 1 for 9 from 3-point, 0 for 8, like just something that you're just not used to seeing from Boogie Fland.
Mm-hmm.
But in the same sense, I feel like Xavier Lee was almost the same way. And I felt like we kept on talking, these Florida guards are like 2 for 18 from 3-point, yet they're still winning these games, but they're just not winning as many games as you might expect them to win. So now that we're starting to see Xavier Lee step up the 3-point shooting, both of these guards are affecting the game in more ways than just scoring. Mm-hmm. I think it's just been such a well-oiled machine for Todd Golden and this Gators team as they start to prep for March.
So I have a simple question now. We've seen some. It's a simple question. I don't know if it's a simple answer. We've seen some change at the top between Michigan and Arizona. And I know that from a record standpoint, those two have been the best teams. However, in your opinion, as we sit right now, do you consider Florida one of the best teams? Obviously, you can't vote them in. Right? The coaches and the AP poll can't vote them in there because of their early season losses. But as we sit right now, do you think this is the best team in the country?
Based on how they've been playing over these last 11 games, I don't know how you can't consider them being the best team in the country.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, if you were to put them up against Michigan, I really think this Florida team could take down Michigan.
Me too.
Because they stack up well. Yaxel Lendenborg is probably going to get canceled out by Houck and Condon.
Mm-hmm.
And Elliot Cadeau is probably going to get canceled out by Boogie Fland in the emergence of his defensive side. So, and we started to see, I believe, the number 2 team now is who is it?
It's number 2 team in the country right now? Yeah, Houston is number 2 right now in the country.
That would be a good game.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some of these other teams, if you were to throw them up against Arizona again, I don't think they're losing twice to Arizona.
Me too.
Like it's just been such a great turnaround, and it goes to what you were saying about Todd Golden. I don't know how you couldn't give him Coach of the Year honors because what he's been able to do in getting this group to gel together. I mean, they lost their entire backcourt from last year's national championship winning team, and it just feels like they just reloaded again.
They've retooled over and over again. Meanwhile, let's flip it over to the Kentucky side because the team scored 83 points. It wasn't like it was just it wasn't a terrible game for them, and they came out, had a really impressive I think game plan. They were also rolling going into this when they had a winning streak. They think they had won 11 of their last 12 games, and I think if there are no such thing as moral victories, but I think if you are Kentucky right now, you're thinking, okay, we could still match up with this group. And I know they ended up losing by 9, but it felt close almost the entire game.
Yeah, and I think like this Florida team, we've really seen this Kentucky team start to grow as the season has gone on. Honestly, that's why this matchup was so compelling, because these were two teams that were honestly right on the same story path. We talked about them early in the season. You know, they're a little bit intriguing. You know, they're underperforming a little bit, both of these teams. Kentucky obviously had that big loss.
Right.
Florida had some questionable losses. I believe one of those was to TCU, and TCU's kind of middle of the pack there in the Big 12. But now we've started to see, honestly, once SEC play started, both of these teams have really started to ramp it up. And I honestly think that I wouldn't be shocked if Kentucky ended the season with a win against Florida once they welcome them to Rupp Arena. It's just you can't let this loss affect you moving forward, because you've got some pretty meaningful games coming up here against some teams that are really trying to get back in the hunt. Georgia, I don't know what is going on right now with Mike White's squad, because Oklahoma dominated them on Saturday, and Oklahoma hasn't really looked good. Auburn is an interesting storyline because
the
they might be slipping here. We'll talk about them in an hour or two. South Carolina, you should win that game. And then Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, two teams that are above 500 in SEC play. So it's one of those stretches where it's like, you lost to Florida,
right?
But you can't let it keep lingering at you because you've got all these teams that are gunning for you right after.
Right. You can't let one loss become two and then two become three. Don't lose that same game twice as they go into and get another big year. We've seen Denzel Aberdeen. We talked a lot about Otega Oweh at the beginning of the season, but Denzel Aberdeen, he's been a nice, consistent piece here for this group.
Yep.
And I think that this is a guy that Coach Pope can lean on the closer we get to the tournament.
Yeah, and I think this game meant a little bit more to him. Obviously, he was a member there of that Florida team that won the national championship last year. I believe he was the first, if not the second man off the bench for Todd Golden. And, I think his stat line really goes to show, hey, I really wanted to do well in this game because when you shoot 8 for 21, you take 21 shots from the field. You think he didn't want to score 30-plus points and be like, hey, Todd, I could have started for you, so let me just go ahead and shoot 21 shots from the field. I mean, you talk about Carmelo Anthony stat line. This is the prime example of one.
It certainly is, and he ended up with a nice day from the stat line. Obviously, the points considered, but this is a Kentucky team that they didn't lead in this game. I know I said earlier it felt like it was closer. I know that it was a double-digit lead at one point. It does feel to me if you are Kentucky right now, you at least have some pieces. I don't know if they have what it takes overall. I mean, they'll just need to get really lucky with their draw in the NCAA tournament. I don't see this as a Final Four team the same way I see Florida as a Final Four team. But this team can make some noise a la kind of what they did last year as I kind of project them forward.
Yeah, and I honestly think the only way they make I don't want to call Kentucky a Cinderella run, but it almost feels like at this point they dropped out of the most recent rankings. They were at 25 last week. It feels like they're going to be hovering right around that 5 or 6 seed, depending on how they finish the season.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not really a Cinderella team by any means, but the only way they make a deep run is if Otega Oweh scores 25-plus points a game. I mean, they don't really have a presence on the inside. That's been a little bit of a missing piece there for Mark Pope, and it just seems like it's taken too long for this team to truly get it together. And it seems like Aberdeen has to have a good night. Oweh has to have a good night. Moreno has to have a good night.
Correct.
He had a double-double against Florida, but it just seems like they can't seem to string it together, put it all together and have one great game. Yeah,
and it's so hard to see a team with a good team that has to have, like you said, everybody play perfectly. It just seems like you can't sustain that to win 6 games in a national championship. It does feel like Florida, there are some chinks in the armor, so to speak, but I think that if you're Kentucky, you just you hope and pray that everybody's clicking at the same time and being able to get it all done. Denzel Aberdeen was the guy on Saturday that came up with the big plays. Mark Pope talked about his star.
Well, they have tremendous size, but I think they're skilled also. I think they're smart players and they're physical and they're pretty relentless and they understand their roles and they do a nice job. It's what they hang their hat on. I thought the difference in the game probably for them today was their guard play was better, and I thought that gave them a real boost, especially early. Well, Florida fans know Denzel. I mean, Denzel's the ultimate competitor. I never worry about the lights with him. I never worry about the moment. I never worry about the distraction because he loves to compete. I mean, this fan base knows him. Of course, our fan base loves him so much. He just is a competitor. He's a special competitor.
So we talked about Kentucky's road down the way, and the last game after that Texas A&M game that you had on your graphic there will be the rematch against the Florida Gators. That game will be in Rupp Arena. Do you see this as a game where they can get back, or is it maybe too early to tell right now because they do have so many important games in between?
I think this upcoming game tomorrow against Georgia is going to be the one that really tells the tale for how the rest of this Kentucky season is going to go, because as I mentioned, you don't want to let that one loss turn into 2, which then starts to spiral. It feels like that's what's going on over there on the Plains with Stephen Pearl's career. They've lost 4 in a row, which is hard to believe. But looking at this Georgia game, Georgia's coming off a 20-plus point loss to Oklahoma. They seem to be slipping out of the race. We talked about early in the season how this Georgia team looks to be primed for a pretty good season, might be a 4 or 5 seed, and right now they're just fighting to stay in it at this point. And it's just crazy. So they're gonna come out with a lot to prove. Obviously, Kentucky's got a lot to prove. They got to prove that this win streak wasn't really just a one-off, and they've got to get to that Florida rematch with no more than one additional loss. That's honestly the blueprint for me. You need to go 4-1 against Georgia, Auburn, South Carolina. I think the one loss might be to Vanderbilt or Texas A&M. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1-or, but 3-2 isn't really going to cut it.
No, I don't think it will either. And I've been saying if I had to make a futures bet right now, I do think that they do split. But I'm with you. I do think that there are some potential pitfalls for this team. If they lose a couple of games in this stretch, they could be deflated going into that final matchup before the SEC tournament and then ultimately the NCAA tournament. Still lots of basketball to be played as we get closer and closer to that game and to the NCAA and the postseason overall.